Dirt under his nails. Mason Rourke had dirt under his nails and peace in his bones. The morning sun hung low over the rolling fields of Varelia 9, casting golden light on rows of wheat swaying in the breeze. Mason knelt beside a faulty irrigation nozzle, tool in hand, coaxing the stubborn thing back to life. The old machine hissed, sputtered, then kicked back into rhythm. He smiled to himself. No war cries, no alarms, just soil, sun, and silence. For a man who'd once wired explosives under the wreckage of warships, it was paradise. Then the sky cracked. A thunderous boom echoed across the valley. Mason looked up, and his breath caught. Black shapes descended from the clouds like a plague of steel locusts. Dropships. Imperial. Dozens of them. The peace shattered instantly. His comm buzzed to life with a panicked voice. "This is Governor Thale. Hostile contact. I repeat, hostile." The message cut off in a flash of static. Mason didn't wait for more. He dropped the wrench, sprinted to his rover, and drove hard toward his homestead. From the ridge, he saw the flames first. His barn was already burning. Troopers in black armor stormed through the fields, rounding up colonists, dragging them into holding pens. Mason's neighbors, people he'd broken bread with, screamed as they were herded like livestock. A woman resisted. She was shot. Mason's hands trembled on the steering wheel, then steadied. He knew this feeling. Not fear, not shock. Focus. He parked behind a cluster of boulders and ran through the orchard, moving low. His house, what remained of it, was swarmed. But the cellar door behind the smokehouse was untouched. He ducked inside, slammed it shut, and pulled aside a dust-covered panel. Beneath the floor lay a tunnel. Something he'd built years ago during the brief pirate raids. Never thought he'd use it. Now it was the only way out. In the dark, he moved silently, every inch of his old training snapping back into place. When he emerged a kilometer away, the scent of burning wheat filled the air. The sky was thick with smoke and screaming engines. He didn't look back. The Empire had taken planets like this before. Backwater colonies. Easy pickings. No fleets. No resistance. But this time, they'd made a mistake. They'd come for the land, but they'd forgotten the man who worked it. By nightfall, Mason reached the highlands. He crouched beneath a canopy of stars, watching dropships descend into the valley like vultures. He had no weapons, no allies, no plan. Just a pack full of tools, a bitter heart, and a mind sharpened by old wars. And that would have to be enough. He whispered into the dark, "You picked the wrong patch of date." Then he vanished into the woods, the farmer no longer running, but beginning to fight. The farmer fights back. The first Imperial convoy vanished near the river bend. 3 transport crawlers, 2 scout bikes, and a personnel carrier. Gone. All that remained were twisted scraps of metal, smoking tires, and a crude wooden token nailed to a charred tree. A carved wheat stalk wrapped in flame. They started whispering his name that night. The farmer. Mason Rourke crouched on a mossy outcrop overlooking the ruined road, watching through old binoculars. The blast had gone exactly as planned. Fertilizer charge packed under the culvert, triggered by the pressure of the third vehicle's weight. Delayed detonation. Minimal shrapnel. Maximum chaos. He'd learned to build things on the farm. And he'd learned to break things in the war. Below, 2 squads of troopers scrambled to set a perimeter. One scanned the trees. The other barked intercoms. Mason knew their lines were down. He jammed their signal with a jury-rigged burst emitter made from an old drone's guidance array. He slipped away silently, descending into the gully where he'd set up camp, a hollowed-out cavern beneath a ridge, hidden by brush and silence. The place smelled of soil and metal. Gear hung from hooks. His old uniform, patched with colonial cloth, lay folded near the fire pit. Mason knelt beside a scavenged datapad, checking local broadcasts. Most were still jammed. One, however, flickered to life, a shaky camera feed showing Imperial forces executing a local village elder. A warning, the trooper called it. A lesson. Mason's jaw clenched. He needed help. Not soldiers, minds. The next night, he crept into an abandoned agrolab near the edge of Zone 4, searching for salvage. Instead, he found prisoners, 3 of them, chained and half-starved. Mechanics. They'd been fixing harvesters for the Empire until they refused to install weapon mounts. Among them was Lena Voss, a wiry woman with oil-stained hands and fierce eyes. She stared at Mason like he was a ghost. "You the one blowing up their supply lines?" she asked, voice hoarse. "I farm," Mason said. "Sometimes things break." Lena grinned. "Well, I fix things. Guess that makes us a good pair." He freed them, handed Lena a knife, and led them back to the ridge. Within a day, she'd rewired his signal jammer to double its range and programmed a scavenge drone to act as a remote scout. "We're not a resistance," Mason warned. "Not yet," Lena replied, "but give it a few more explosions." Their first real strike together came 3 nights later, an ambush on an Imperial convoy delivering resource extractors. They laid charges beneath a wooden bridge, timed to collapse as the lead crawler crossed. The resulting fireball lit up the valley like sunrise. From the treetops, Mason watched the flames lick skyward. Lena handed him another carved token, this one shaped like a flame coiled around a spade. "Your brand," she said. "Every good story needs one." Mason didn't smile. He simply whispered, "Then let's write the next chapter in fire." The militia grows. The explosion at North Ridge Station wasn't just loud. It was loud enough to be heard from 3 provinces away. That was the night the Empire realized they weren't fighting just a saboteur. They were fighting a movement. Mason stood on the charred ground, boots dusted with ash, watching the smoke curl into the evening sky. Lena knelt beside a disarmed scout drone, already salvaging parts. Around them, a dozen locals, farmhands, miners, even a retired biology teacher, scanned the wreckage for usable gear. Their eyes were sharp now, their hands steady. What had started as whispers had become a flood. They called it the Reapfire Militia. It wasn't an army, not yet, but it was growing. After every skirmish, more people sought them out. Survivors, runaways, laborers tired of wearing chains. Mason didn't turn them away. He trained them, not to fight like soldiers, but like survivors, how to set traps, move silently, and use the land as their ally. He knew they couldn't match the Empire in firepower, so they used what the Empire didn't understand: terrain, patience, and purpose. Lena turned the stolen tech into miracles. She built a comm network from old survey transmitters buried across the province. Each outpost could now pass intel silently between valleys, supply routes, troop movements, attack plans. They called it the Wheat Line. One night, Mason met with a new group hiding in an abandoned grain silo. Among them was a scarred man in a weathered uniform, Corin Dace, a former Virelia Ranger who'd lost his family to the initial invasion. "You trained with the Navy?" Mason asked. "I trained to kill Imperials," Corin said. "And now I want to learn from the man who's already doing it." They shook hands. The militia had its first true field officer. But victories had costs. The Empire responded with brutality. Villages suspected of aiding the resistance were burned. Entire families executed as warnings. Commander Scareth, brought in to crush the rebellion, broadcast a bounty on Mason's head, 5,000 credits, dead or alive. It backfired. The next week, 2 entire patrols defected and joined the militia. One of them handed Mason a severed rank pin. "He burned our homes too," the soldiers said. That was when Mason knew it had changed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming something. That night, Lena helped him hijack an Imperial broadcast channel. Across Virelia 9, every screen flickered, then showed Mason's weathered face, eyes like stone. "You lit fire to our fields," he said, voice steady. "But you forgot who plowed them. You forgot who survives here." He held up one of the wooden tokens, wheat and flame. "We aren't rebels. We're the roots you tried to burn, and we're growing back angry." He cut the signal. Across the galaxy, rebellion sparked. Harvest of fire. The night was thick with smoke and anticipation. Mason crouched beside Lena on the overlook above Fort Howrix, the Empire's central command post on Virelia 9. The old fortress had once been a colonial research station, now repurposed into a fortress of steel, concrete, and arrogance. "This is it," Lena whispered, adjusting the remote detonator. You sure they are all in there? Mason nodded. Commander Scareth called for a province-wide pacification briefing. We've got one shot. Below, columns of black armored troops marched into the compound. Dropships hissed steam into the air. Lights blazed across the valley. It looked invincible. That's what made it vulnerable. The plan had taken weeks. Smuggled charges buried in water lines. A false trail leaked through defectors. Signal repeaters calibrated to trigger in sequence. Every wire placed by calloused hands who once wired harvest drones, now weaponized for war. Corin Dace led the ground team, hidden in irrigation tunnels below the fortress. Lena monitored the wheat line relays. Mason held the trigger. His thumb hovered above the button. No speeches, no second guesses. He pressed it. The night exploded. A thunderclap of flame burst through the heart of Fort Howrix. Fuel stores ignited. Communications towers crumpled. Steel and screams tore through the valley as the fortress imploded from within. Troopers scattered in chaos. From every ridge, every grove, from behind broken tractors and overgrown grain silos, the militia rose. They struck with precision. Saboteurs cut supply routes. Sharpshooters took out fleeing officers. Civilians poured in, not just with weapons, but with resolve. Entire towns revolted simultaneously, coordinated through Lena's hacked wheat line. By dawn, the Empire's provincial stronghold had fallen. Scareth's command ship burned on the landing pad. His corpse was never found. In the silence that followed, Mason stood among the rubble, coated in dust and ash. He wasn't smiling. He never did. Corin limped up beside him. The comm scans are clear. No more broadcasts from Imperial High Command. Lena joined them, her face streaked with grime but eyes alight. We did it. Mason looked at the ruins, then to the rising sun. We started something. Virilia 9 was free, but news had already spread. Other colonies, watching silently for signs of weakness, were rising. Protests turned to strikes. Strikes to riots. And from the riots, fighters emerged. The Empire had tried to crush a farmer. Instead, it had fertilized a revolution. Weeks later, as a provisional council formed in Virilia's capital, Mason refused every title they offered. Commander, General, Hero. I'm just a farmer, he said. I plant what grows. They gave us fire. We grew it into something else. He returned to his homestead, what was left of it, and began rebuilding the fields. But he kept the tools sharpened, the tunnel reinforced, and above his door he hung a carved wooden token, a stalk of wheat, wreathed in flame.